Today we look at some of the most notorious crimes from history, ones that still lack a definitive answer. Not the first time we've done this, it probably won't be the last, because the past provides us with a endless supply of vicious and controversial murders. Welcome to the True Crime Never Sleeps podcast. I am your host, Larry Leese. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Poddex, for sponsoring this episode. Visit poddex.com and use the promo code Larry21 for 10% off your purchase. I'd also like to thank our new sponsor, Audible. You can check out Audible today and get a free 30-day trial going to audibletrial.com/Larry21. And as always, you can become a part of the show by sending us a voicemail at 682-305-0483. And now let's dive right into 7 major crimes that will never be solved. Number 7, the murder of Julia Wallace. You're the kind of crime buff who spends their time reading about old unsolved cases, and chances are you've already come across the murder of Julia Wallace. She took place in her home in Liverpool. For lack of a better word, it's classic. January 19th, 1931, William Herbert Wallace went to the Liverpool Central Chess Club to play a few games. There he had a message waiting for him from a man he did not know, named R.M. Qualtrough, who asked him to meet the following night at a certain address to discuss insurance business. Wallace did as he was told. He went to meet this mysterious stranger, but discovered that the street he was given did not exist. Coming back home after a wild goose chase, Wallace found both doors to his home locked. This was according to him, but when his neighbors tried the back door, it opened right away. Inside the house, he saw the body of his wife, 60-year-old Julia Wallace, who had been beaten to death and left in a pool of blood. Wallace was arrested and charged with his wife's murder. He was found guilty and sentenced to hang, but the conviction was quashed on appeal. He had a pretty good alibi after all, having been seen by multiple people that night in different parts of the city. Nobody else was ever charged. Ever since, it has been hailed as a locked room mystery and an impossible murder. It has puzzled both professional and amateur sleuths alike for almost a century. Number 6, the Pimlico Poisoning. We are staying in England, but going a bit further to 1886, when a wealthy but sickly grocer named Thomas Edward Bartlett died suddenly of poisoning. His much younger wife, Adelaide Bartlett, was charged with his murder, which she may have committed with the help of an accomplice named Reverend George Dyson. The exact relationship between Adelaide and Dyson has never been established conclusively, but it has been claimed that Mr. and Mrs. Bartlett had a platonic marriage and that the older husband knew and even approved of his wife's activities. At first, it seemed like an open and shut case. Inside Bartlett's stomach, doctors found a lethal quantity of chloroform. Prior to this, Dyson had visited several pharmacies buying a bottle of chloroform in each one, small enough that he didn't have to register his name to purchase it. Everything pointed to Adelaide and her lover poisoning her husband, but there was one thing that did not add up. Bartlett had no signs of swallowing the chloroform. The substance was a corrosive and should have left clear marks on the victim's mouth and throat, but there weren't any. The only way this could happen was if Bartlett swallowed the whole chloroform quickly. Because of this, Adelaide's defense team argued that her husband committed suicide and had drank the poison willingly. The jury bought it, and she was acquitted and soon disappeared from the public eye. Plenty remained convinced that she had, in fact, poisoned her husband, although how it was done remains a mystery. Number 5, the Bigfoot Killer. America seems to have an abundant supply of serial killers, so many in fact that while some become infamous, like the Zodiac or the Son of Sam, others are destined for obscurity. Even other crimes were no less heinous or violent. Throughout 1975, Detroit had a murderer on its hands who targeted prostitutes working in a poor neighborhood known as Cass Corridor. Witness descriptions said the suspect was a tall, muscular black man with an afro, with exceptionally large hands and feet, so he became known as the Bigfoot Killer. He murdered between 5 and 7 victims throughout the year, and then simply disappeared, never to be heard from again. For a while, it looked like police had a solid suspect in custody. A man named Carl Mayweather had been arrested for an attempted rape, and he fit the physical description of the Bigfoot Killer. However, he produced solid alibis for some of the murders, so no further charges were brought against him. Bigfoot Killer remains unidentified to this day. Number 4, the Tabloid Scandal. At first glance, the murder of Helen Jewett in 1836 did not seem likely to become too memorable. As sad as that was, the death of a prostitute in New York did not usually garner much attention. However, thanks to the newspapers, mainly the New York Herald, it became one of America's earliest tabloid scandals. Jewett's body was discovered by the brothel's Madame Rosina Townsend on the morning of April 10, 1836. She had been struck in the head repeatedly with a sharp object, later concluded to have been a hatchet. Afterwards, the bed and the body had been partially set on fire. The madam accused one of Jewett's regulars of being the killer, a 19-year-old named Richard Robinson. Quickly assembled coroner's jury looked over the scene and agreed with the assessment. So Robinson was arrested and put on trial. Normally, this sort of crime was destined for the lurid back pages of the penny press. But American entrepreneur James Gordon Bennett decided that it had the right amount of sex, scandal, and violence to become a hit with the readers of the New York Herald, which he had only founded the year prior. He started by giving the murderer a full front page on the Herald and covered the investigation and the trial extensively. As far as Robinson was concerned, he was acquitted and left New York soon after. Helen Jewett's murder was never solved. Number 3, who killed Lynn Harper? One of Canada's most gruesome and controversial crimes occurred on June 9, 1959. The 12-year-old Lynn Harper disappeared near the Air Force Base in Clinton, Ontario. Her body was found a few days later with signs of sexual assault and strangulation. The crime itself was already shocking to the Canadian public. They got another surprise when the police presented their main suspect, a 14-year-old boy named Stephen Truscott. He was one of Lynn's classmates, and on the night of her disappearance, he gave her a ride on his bicycle, thus becoming the last known person to see her alive. Truscott maintained that he dropped Lynn off at an intersection and then saw her get into a car. Due to the serious nature of the crime, the 14-year-old was tried as an adult, and not only that, he was found guilty. He was then sentenced to death, becoming the youngest inmate in the history of Canada to receive the death penalty. He was on death row for months before his punishment was commuted to life in prison. Truscott spent 10 years in prison before being released on parole, and it wasn't until 2007 that he was acquitted of the murder. And before we get to the final 2, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up if you like our videos. And you can also listen to us on Good Pods and all major podcast platforms. So number 2, the Sandyford Place Mystery. The Scottish city of Glasgow has a small area near the city centre with a violent history. Dubbed the Square Mile of Murder, it had been the location of 4 of Glasgow's most infamous crimes, all occurring within a 50-year window during the second half of the 19th century. Today we're looking at one of the 4, known as the Sandyford Place Mystery. One summer morning in 1862, the body of a servant girl named Jess McPherson was found in the basement of her employer's house at Sandyford Place. She had been stabbed to death, and suspicion soon fell on her friend Jessie McLaughlin after the victim's coat was found in her home. Her friend Jessie was arrested, charged, convicted, and sentenced to death, but this resulted in public outcry. According to her, McPherson was killed by James Fleming, the father of her employer. He was a drunk with a violent temper, and he may have lashed out when the servant girl rejected his advances. The judge didn't buy her story, but it seemed that the people did, and they soon regarded McLaughlin as a convenient scapegoat to protect one of Glasgow's wealthy and influential families. McLaughlin served 15 years before being released and moving to America, but whether or not she actually murdered Jess McPherson still remains a hotly debated topic. And number 1, the Villaska axe murders. Over 100 years ago, something terrible happened in Villaska, Iowa. Something that forever changed the course of its history and ensured that the sleepy little town will forever be associated with one of America's most gruesome home invasions, which has since become known as the Villaska axe murders. Josiah Moore and his wife Sarah were considered pillars of the community. He ran one of the biggest businesses in town, and both were very active at their local Presbyterian church. It was after one such event on Sunday, June 9th, 1912, that the Moores were returning home from church with their 4 young children and 2 other girls, Lena and Ina Mae Stillinger, who were coming over for a sleepover with their daughter Catherine. The group of 8 arrived home at around 10 p.m. They went inside, not knowing that they would never leave again, because inside the house, probably in the attic, going by the discarded cigarette butts, was a murderous madman waiting for everyone to fall asleep. After they did, he went from room to room, killing everyone with axe blows to the head. The ghastly deed was discovered the following morning by a neighbor and Josiah's brother, Ross Moore. The subsequent investigation yielded plenty of suspects, although there wasn't a strong case against any of them. Some of the more notable contenders included a traveling preacher named Reverend George Kelly, state senator named Frank Jones, killer for hire named William Mansfield, and a suspected serial killer named Henry Lee Moore. The Reverend was arrested and charged, but was acquitted at trial, and nobody else was ever convicted of the Villaska axe murders. And so now for our Pondex segment for True Crime. Today's question is, why do you think some people live stream their crimes on social media platforms? I think it's their notoriety. I think back in the day, people gained notoriety for, sending letters to, the press or the police. I think live streaming is now what you do if you want to become infamous and be remembered for your crimes. And I think nowadays, everybody's got access to social media. So if somebody posts something on Twitter or something about their crime, it's gonna get shared by everybody before whatever social media company it is has the ability to shut it down. So yeah, mainly it's for the notoriety. Why do you think some people live stream their crimes on social media platforms? Let us know in the comments section below. As always, please hit that subscribe button. I really want to hit 1,000 subscribers by Christmas. Hit that thumbs up if you like our videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Yes, thanks for watching. If you like our videos, check out our video over here on the Delphi murders. And there's a video over here for another unsolved murder.